You don't realize how deep the rot goes until you leave the house and breathe air that doesn't accuse you of existing. That's what I learned the day I turned 17 and saw my reflection in the school restroom mirror after gym class. My lip was busted again, and I'd told Coach Marshall it was from football practice. But we both knew I didn't play football. He didn't ask questions. Nobody ever asked questions. I was the difficult son, the moody one. In a house where silence was survival, I was the noise. My name is Ezra, and I grew up in a home without mirrors. Not literally, we had them, of course. In the hallway, above the fireplace, in the bathroom, but they never showed the truth. Because truth was dangerous. It made people like my dad uncomfortable. It made people like my mom look away. My father was a master craftsman, not of wood, but of perception. He could build a lie like a cathedral and live inside it. To everyone on the outside, he was a respected lawyer, a charming neighbor, a father who just wanted the best for his kids. But inside those four walls, he was the judge, jury, and executioner of our lives. And my mother, she played the piano softly when he yelled. She made tea after he stormed out. She patched the holes in the wall but never asked why there were holes in the first place. She clung to the illusion like it was oxygen, convincing herself that her husband's cruelty was just stress, that her son's bruises were accidents, that her daughter's silence was just a phase. But Chloe, my sister, was never silent. Not really. She learned young that in our house, speaking up was met with fury. But she listened. She remembered. She watched. And she knew. Chloe was 2 years older, but you'd think she was 10. She carried herself like someone who had learned the rules of our father's game too early and decided to quietly rewrite them. We had a code between us. Nothing official, but real nonetheless. The tap of a finger on the kitchen table meant, "Are you okay?" The scratch behind the ear meant, "Not safe to talk." And the flick of her eyes, just once, meant, "Get out." I still remember the first time I realized she was protecting me. I was 12. Dad was drunk. He'd come home early and found my school report, 2 B's, 1 C. He threw it in my face, said I was a waste, a disappointment, a parasite who'd suck the life out of any future he tried to build. I froze. I didn't cry. You learn not to. But Chloe stepped between us. She didn't say anything. Just stood there in her purple socks, holding a laundry basket, like she just happened to pass through the hallway at the exact right moment. And he stopped. Just like that. She told me later, "Don't give him the power to see you flinch." It wasn't until we were both older that we started piecing things together. The quiet phone calls. The long absences. The credit card statements my sister found tucked in a drawer. Affairs. Multiple. Years long. Women. Hotels. One of them barely older than Chloe. And suddenly, it all made sense. My mother's passive complicity. The shame in her eyes. The way she always chose Dad's version of the story, even when she was shaking. Everything in our family, the rage, the gaslighting, the endless blame, stemmed from one truth no one wanted to name: our father had betrayed her. And she turned that pain inward, then passed it down to us. But this story isn't about our father. It's about what Chloe did next. And what I finally did too. The thing about living in a gaslit house is that you start to doubt your own senses. Was the yelling really that loud? Did he really say that, or did I just misunderstand? Maybe it really was my fault for not mowing the lawn right, for talking back, for existing wrong. That's how the house was built. Not with bricks and beams, but with confusion layered over fear, sealed tight with shame. But Chloe had always been better at sniffing out the smoke behind the fire. It was the night of her 18th birthday when everything began to change. Mom had made her famous lasagna. Dad came home with a bouquet from the gas station and a cheap necklace still in its plastic packaging. He made a speech about how his little girl was growing up, and how he was so proud. Everyone laughed, smiled, played along. Except Chloe. She stared at the candles without blinking. I saw her lips move before she blew them out. "He doesn't get to blow out mine." That night, she came into my room while I was lying on my bed, still dressed, headphones in but no music playing. "Ezra," she said softly, "I need you to see something." She handed me a stack of printed pages, screenshots, emails, photos. One by one, they peeled the scab off our family's wound. Text messages from Dad to women named B and Summer. Receipts from hotels across the state. A picture of him shirtless, in a mirror, in a room that clearly wasn't our home. He's been cheating since before I was 12, she said. Mom knows. She's known. I stared at the photos, felt my stomach twist. But why didn't she leave? Why is she like this? Why do they both blame us? Chloe sat down beside me on the bed. Because if she admitted what he really is, she'd have to admit she stayed. That she let it happen. And if we're the problem, then she doesn't have to face what she lost. It made me sick. Not just the betrayal, but the years wasted trying to become the son he wanted, the boy she wouldn't apologize for. The thousands of small ways I shrunk myself to fit the space between their resentments. I'm done pretending, she said. I applied to colleges out of state. All of them. I don't care if I have to take out loans till I'm 60. I'm leaving. What about me? I asked. She looked at me then, not like a sister, but like a soldier who knew her battle wasn't over yet. We get you out too, she said. Whatever it takes. It was the first time I felt hope without guilt. Over the next few weeks, Chloe taught me everything I'd need, how to save passwords somewhere safe, how to hide money in the vent behind my bed, how to keep my head down while watching everything. We were preparing for war. Quietly. Patiently. Every fake smile we gave our father was a brick pulled from the foundation. But like all storms, this one broke without warning. It started with a plate. One Chloe washed and left to dry. He said it wasn't clean enough. She said nothing. He shoved it off the counter. It shattered. So did everything after that. Yelling. Accusations. Hurt, disrespect. His sacrifices. Then, me. He turned to me and snarled, "This is your fault too. You're just like her. Always sneaking, always judging." That's when Chloe stepped between us. Again. Just like she had 5 years ago. Only this time, she didn't just stand still. She laughed. "You think we don't know?" she said, voice sharp and electric. "You think your secrets stay buried because no one digs? I've got everything, Dad. Everything." For the first time, he looked scared. And Mom, she didn't even ask what she meant. She just sat down and started crying. That's when I knew, they weren't a team. They were both prisoners. Just in different cells. But we had the key. After that night, the silence in the house wasn't the same. It was no longer the heavy, suffocating kind that pressed against your chest like a weight. No, this silence had sharp edges. It buzzed in the corners. It waited. It knew something was coming. Dad avoided both of us for 3 days. He didn't slam doors or throw dishes. He didn't bark orders or pace the hallway like a wolf in a suit. He just disappeared behind closed doors. We heard the clicking of his keyboard late at night. We caught flashes of him whispering on his cell phone in the garage. Mom, on the other hand, started making tea again. That was always her thing. When she couldn't control something, she reached for the kettle. She asked if we wanted toast. She folded laundry that wasn't hers. She vacuumed rooms we hadn't stepped into in weeks. She called it, keeping the peace. But Chloe called it what it really was, complicity wrapped in denial. "Don't let her drag you back into the fog," Chloe warned me. She made her choice. We make ours. And that's when she showed me the letter. She had written a personal statement, one she was sending to colleges, yes, but also to me. To the world. To anyone who would listen. I grew up in a house where pain wore a suit and silence wore perfume. My father cheated, my mother concealed, and my brother and I paid the price. We weren't rebellious. We were responsive. Our defiance was survival. I read those lines a dozen times. Each one was a door swinging open. A light turning on. She wasn't just getting out. She was taking me with her. A week later, she got her first acceptance letter, from a university 3 states away. Full scholarship. Honors program. Dad didn't say congratulations. He said, "You think you're better than us? You think some dorm room in another state is going to fix you?" That was the first time Chloe didn't flinch when he raised his voice. "No," she said calmly. "But it'll be the first place I get to be me without having to apologize for it." I couldn't stop watching her that night. Not because she looked brave, but because she looked free. Even while still trapped inside that house, she was already standing somewhere else in her mind. And I wanted to be there too. But Dad wasn't done. A few days later, I came home from school to find Chloe's laptop smashed on the floor. Her printed documents gone. And Mom, just standing there, wiping her hands with a dish towel like she hadn't just watched a crime unfold. "He found her files," she whispered. "He thought she was going to ruin him." My voice cracked. "She is." That night, Chloe and I packed everything important into 2 duffel bags. Birth certificates. USB drives. Clothes. Flash drives. The last photo we had of us as kids before things got bad, before the mask our father wore started to crack. We didn't sleep. At 6:15 a.m., just before Dad usually got up, Chloe turned to me and said, "Today's the day." I nodded. "You go. I'll handle the rest." She hesitated. "You sure?" "Yeah," I said. "We both can't vanish." "Not yet." She grabbed my hand. Pressed something into it. A tiny digital recorder. "If anything happens, use this." And then she was gone. She got on a bus to her new life, and I stayed behind to make sure the door stayed open long enough for me to follow. That evening, I sat at the dinner table like nothing had changed. Dad stared at me from across the table, chewing like a man who believed he still owned everything in the room. Mom brought over a plate of meatloaf. I pushed it away. "Not hungry," I said. Dad leaned forward. "You want to end up like her?" My hands didn't shake. "Yeah. I do." He slammed his fist on the table. "You're just like your sister, ungrateful. Poison." I hit record. The recorder in my pocket felt like it weighed 10 pounds. It wasn't just a device. It was a lifeline. A secret. A dare. Dad kept ranting, pacing, spinning himself into his usual storm of outrage, talking about disrespect, family shame, betrayal. But I didn't interrupt. I didn't fight back. I let him talk. I let him show himself. And when he finally left the kitchen, still cursing under his breath, I walked upstairs and locked myself in my room. I pulled the recorder from my pocket, heart racing, and replayed the last few minutes. His voice filled the tiny speaker. "You're just like your sister, ungrateful. Poison. I should have kicked both of you out years ago. Maybe your mother would have remembered how to be a wife." There it was. The rot, captured in sound. No editing, no excuses. Just truth. I emailed the file to Chloe, then to myself, then to a secure cloud drive she'd set up months ago. Redundant, she called it. Safe. The next day, I didn't go to school. I went to the counselor's office instead. Mrs. Alvarez had been asking questions for months, polite ones, quiet ones. The kind that hinted she knew something was off. When I walked in and handed her the flash drive, I think she understood everything all at once. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" She didn't say, "Maybe it's just a phase." She said, "Thank you for trusting me." By the end of that day, everything had changed. Social workers showed up at the house that evening. Dad answered the door with his mask already on, charming, friendly, confused by the mix-up. But they didn't just have my words now. They had his. And for once, his lies weren't louder than the truth. I sat on the bottom step of the staircase while they talked. Mom hovered nearby, pale and shaking, like a ghost still tethered to the hallway. "Did you know about any of this?" one of the women asked her. She looked at me. Then at Dad. Then down at her feet. "I didn't think it was that bad," she whispered. "But I did. Chloe did. We had always known." By the next week, I was placed temporarily with Chloe's friend's family, Mr. and Mrs. Jameson, who welcomed me without questions. Just space, safety, and silence that didn't hurt. Chloe drove down to visit me that Friday. She brought snacks, a blanket from home, and a worn-out photo of the two of us at the county fair when we were kids, before the yelling, before the hiding, before survival became a strategy. We sat on the hood of her car outside the Jamesons' driveway, under a sky so wide it made the world feel bigger than I ever knew it could be. "I knew you'd get out," she said softly. I looked at her. I didn't. "Not really." She smiled then, small, but fierce. "That's why I never left you behind. There's something strange that happens after the storm passes. You start to hear yourself again. Not the voice that apologized for everything. Not the one that tiptoed around anger or shrank under someone else's guilt. Your real voice. The one that says, I was never the problem. I'd believed it for so long, that I was broken, lazy, cold, unstable. But now I knew, I'd been blamed for the cracks in a foundation I didn't build." A few weeks later, we were called in for a legal hearing. My father tried to frame everything as a misunderstanding. He claimed I'd made it all up because I was jealous of my sister's success. Mom sat beside him, looking small, like a folded napkin, clean, neat, and used. But then they played the recording. The room went quiet. The judge looked at me and said, "You don't have to explain. This says everything." Afterward, as we walked out into the afternoon sun, Chloe turned to me and said, "You ready?" "For what?" She pulled a set of car keys from her jacket. "For whatever comes next." And for the first time in my life, I believed that next didn't mean more pain. It meant possibility. Freedom didn't knock on our door. We kicked the door down and walked through it together. People like to say, time heals all wounds. But time doesn't heal what hasn't been acknowledged. Time doesn't erase the sound of slammed doors or the way a dinner plate shatters when it's hurled across a kitchen in the middle of an argument no one else hears. What does heal is truth. What heals is survival that turns into living. And that's what Chloe and I were finally learning to do. I moved in with the Jamesons for good after the court finalized everything. The state ruled that our father was emotionally and psychologically abusive. He wasn't charged criminally, not yet, but the court granted me legal independence from him, and gave me the right to stay where I was. I was 17, nearly 18. Old enough to be heard. Old enough to matter. Mom never visited. Not once. She sent a card a few weeks later, blank on the inside, except for a typed line that read, "I hope you're happy now." I didn't cry. I just folded it in half, once, then again, until it was too small to mean anything. Chloe kept going. She had her own small apartment off campus now. She worked 2 jobs between classes. But every Sunday morning like clockwork, she picked me up in her old Civic, and we got coffee and walked through the bookstore near the river. We didn't talk about the house much. Not because we were pretending it didn't happen, but because we were too busy building something new. Something real. That's when Chloe gave me the idea. "You know," she said, sipping her coffee, "I think you should write this down." I looked at her. "What, like a journal?" "No," she said. "A story. Not just for us. For kids who think they're going crazy inside houses that pretend to be homes." I resisted at first. I didn't want to relive it all. But the more I wrote, the less power those memories had over me. They couldn't trap me if I held the pen. One day at school, I gave a draft to Mrs. Alvarez. She read the first 3 pages, then took off her glasses and wiped her eyes. "You need to share this," she said. She helped me submit it to a teen writing contest. I didn't expect anything to come of it. But 2 months later, I got a letter in the mail that started with, "Congratulations." The story was published in a national anthology. People wrote to me, real people. Teens. Adults. Teachers. Even a social worker from another state who said, "I handed your story to a kid last week. He asked me, for the first time, if I believed him. I said yes." That's when I realized, we hadn't just escaped something. We'd changed something. Dad faded into the background after that. He tried to threaten legal action once, claiming defamation, but we had proof, and more importantly, he didn't scare us anymore. Mom. She moved out of the house 6 months later. Chloe said she heard through someone that she was living alone in a condo near the city, still playing piano. Still making tea. Sometimes, I wonder if she ever forgives herself. Now, Chloe and I talk about the future in present tense. She wants to go into trauma counseling. I've started a blog for kids like us, Shards of Silence. We answer emails. We hold space for people who are still trapped in homes that look perfect from the outside. One message stood out last week. It was from a 15-year-old boy who said, "I thought I was crazy. I thought I was the problem. But after reading your story, I think maybe I'm not. That's why I keep writing. Not to stay angry. Not to stay hurt. But to say, we were never the problem. And neither are you. There's something strange about healing, something nobody tells you. It doesn't arrive with a sunrise or an apology. It creeps in quietly, on the days you stop expecting pain. When a loud voice no longer makes you flinch. When you look in the mirror and recognize the person staring back. When you no longer need to explain your survival to anyone. That's where I was. Still bruised in places people couldn't see. But whole in ways I didn't think were possible when I lived under my father's roof. I had just turned 18. Chloe and I celebrated by driving to the ocean. We hadn't been there since we were kids, before things got twisted, before our family became a performance with too many curtains and not enough exits. We stood at the edge of the water, toes buried in sand, waves dragging back the cold. "You remember this place?" Chloe asked. I nodded. "You lost your shoe trying to catch a seagull." She laughed. "And you cried because you thought the ocean was going to take me. Turns out I had reason to worry." That made her go quiet. And then she said something I didn't expect. "You saved me, you know." I blinked. "What?" "All those years I thought I had to hold everything together. Protect you. Take the hits. But you didn't just survive. You spoke. You told. You got us out." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I only did it because of you." She smiled. "Maybe that's the point. We did it for each other. We watched the tide roll in and out like breath. And for once, we didn't feel afraid of the next wave." Later that night, in the quiet of her apartment, Chloe handed me an envelope. "What's this?" It came in the mail. From her. My chest tightened. I opened it slowly. Neat handwriting. A faint smell of her perfume. My mother. "Ezra. I don't expect you to understand me. I'm not sure I understand myself. I failed you. I see that now. I chose silence, and you suffered for it. But I want you to know, I read your story. Every word. I saw what I looked like through your eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't run. I stayed and read until the end. I'm sorry. And if there's any space left in your heart, even the smallest corner, I'd like a chance to get to know you. Not as a mother who protected the wrong man, but as a woman who's trying to start again. Love. Mom." I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how to. Forgiveness isn't a straight line, it's not a switch you flip when someone finally says what they should have said years ago. But that night, I dreamed of a house with real mirrors. Ones that didn't distort. Ones that didn't hide bruises behind smiles. And I saw my mother there, alone, dusting the piano keys. Maybe the letter was real. Maybe the regret was too. But I also knew this, I didn't need her apology to be whole. I didn't need her love to be worthy. That part of me, the part that always needed her to choose me, was finally quiet. Because I had already been chosen. By Chloe. By truth. By the version of myself that didn't apologize for surviving. In the end, we didn't rebuild our family. We built something better. Something honest. Something free. They say memory softens with time. But some things don't fade. Some things don't get lighter. You just grow strong enough to carry them. Like the sound of my father's voice when he called me a disappointment. Like the way my mother looked down instead of speaking up. Like the cold knot I used to wake up with in my stomach, wondering what version of home I'd walk into that day. I don't carry those memories to stay angry. I carry them to remind myself, we made it out. After my mother's letter, things didn't change overnight. I didn't call her. I didn't write back. But I thought about her. I thought about how much of her silence was fear. And how much was choice. I asked Chloe what she thought I should do. She didn't answer right away. She just looked out the window of her apartment, the light from the city glinting against the glass like old scars. I think you don't owe her anything, she said. But if you need something, closure, a conversation, whatever, then do it. But do it for you. Not for her. That was Chloe. Always drawing the lines I couldn't see. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, I found myself walking into a small cafe downtown, one Mom had mentioned in the letter. She said she went there sometimes. Alone. I don't know what made me go. Maybe curiosity. Maybe forgiveness, growing like moss in the cracks. Maybe I just wanted to look her in the eye and see if she looked back. I ordered coffee and sat at a table near the back. My heart thudded hard against my ribs. My hands were steady, though. That surprised me. And then, she walked in. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but spiritually. Like a balloon with no more air to fake its fullness. Her eyes scanned the room. Landed on mine. She froze. I didn't smile. I didn't stand. I just waited. She came over slowly, like approaching a fragile truth. "Hi," she whispered, her voice thinner than I remembered. I nodded. "Sit, if you want." She did. Folded her hands in her lap. Looked at me like she was seeing someone who had aged 100 years in a year. "I didn't think you'd ever," she started. "I'm not here to fix anything," I interrupted. "I'm just here to listen. One time. You get that?" She nodded, eyes glassy. "I do." She told me about the years she spent ignoring what she couldn't face. About the bruises she never acknowledged. The lies she told herself to survive. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She just owned it. That mattered. When I left, I didn't hug her. But I said something I never thought I would. "I hope you figure out who you are, outside of him." Her lip trembled. She nodded. "I'm trying." Later that night, I told Chloe everything. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she asked, "Do you regret going?" "No," I said. "But I'm glad I didn't go expecting something." "Good," she replied. "Because we already found what we needed. In us." The next morning, I checked the blog inbox, Shards of Silence, and found a message from a girl named Rowan. 16. From Kentucky. She wrote. "My dad tells everyone I'm the problem. My mom just stares at the wall. But reading your story, I don't feel as crazy anymore. I think maybe it's not my fault. I think maybe I can make it, too." I showed Chloe. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she whispered, "That's why we tell the truth. For kids like her. We carry the weight, yes. But we turn it into something. Not just survival. Legacy." I used to think healing meant going back to who I was before it all. Before the bruises. Before the yelling. Before the silence. But healing isn't a return. It's a rebuild. You don't go back. You start over. And this time, you build differently. Chloe and I started talking about getting a place together. Not because we needed to. But because we could. A place that was ours. No ghosts in the walls. No hidden rules. No walking on eggshells. A place where music didn't mean someone was trying to hide the noise. Where silence wasn't dangerous. Where the door could stay unlocked because no one in the house was the threat. She was almost done with her degree. I was enrolled to start college in the fall. Creative writing. We found a small apartment on the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, chipped tiles, and a view of the alley. It wasn't much, but it was everything. We painted the walls ourselves. Chloe picked soft sage green for the kitchen. I chose dark blue for my room. We put up photos that didn't come with memories we had to edit. Real smiles. Real light. There were no rules taped to the fridge. No passive-aggressive notes. No slammed doors. Only this, we talk here. One night, Chloe knocked on my door. She never knocked before entering. But this time, she waited. I opened it to find her holding a shoebox. "What's that?" She sat on the floor, crossed her legs, and opened the box. Inside were scraps of paper, old ticket stubs, a faded envelope, a flash drive, and a photograph of us in front of our old house. "What is this?" I asked. "A time capsule," she said. "Of everything we survived. Everything we're not bringing with us." I stared at the box. My chest tightened. She slid the photo out. "We can keep this one if you want. Or burn it. I'm okay either way." I took it from her. The house behind us looked so clean. So quiet. But I remembered that day. We had just come back from the store. Dad had shouted in the car because Chloe bought a brand of shampoo he didn't like. She didn't say a word the whole ride home. When we got back, Mom had insisted we take a nice photo before dinner. We smiled for the camera. Then went back inside like good little ghosts. "Let's burn it," I said. She smiled. "Yeah. Let's." We built a small fire in the courtyard behind the building, just a candle in a coffee tin. We didn't say anything as we dropped the photograph inside. Just watched the edges curl, the image bubble and vanish. It didn't feel like erasing. It felt like reclaiming. Like taking the pen back and saying, "We're the authors now." That night, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I stared at a blank page for a long time before typing. This isn't a story about pain. It's a story about what pain couldn't take from us. Our voices. Our bond. Our future. And for anyone still trapped inside a house that steals your reflection, please hear me. You are not the problem. You are the key. It had been a year since we moved into the apartment. A year of real laughter. Shared groceries. Midnight talks that didn't end in fear. A year of peace that still felt unfamiliar sometimes, like trying on clothes meant for someone braver. Chloe was about to graduate. I was halfway through my first semester, turning trauma into stories, grief into paragraphs. Our blog, Shards of Silence, had grown beyond what we imagined. We got messages from teens, survivors, even professionals who said they used our story in their training. It felt like we'd cracked something open, and the light was finally pouring in. And then, out of nowhere, came the email. It was a cold Thursday morning. I had just poured my cereal when I saw Chloe staring at her laptop screen like it had slapped her. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just turned the screen to me. The subject line, "You missed something." The sender had no name. Just a string of numbers. I clicked on the message. "You were right about your father. About the abuse. About your mother's silence. But there's something you never asked. Why did they work so hard to keep you quiet? Ask your mother who paid for your private middle school tuition. Ask her why she cried every time your father got a phone call after 10 p.m. Ask her who really held the power in that house. Not the one yelling. The one whispering. A friend." We stared at each other. "Spam," I said. But even I didn't believe that. Chloe shook her head slowly. No one knew about the school thing. Not unless they were close. The email had no attachments. No links. Nothing to trace. But it lingered in the air like smoke. A spark we couldn't ignore. We didn't sleep that night. The next day, Chloe did something neither of us had done since our court battle. She called our mother. They agreed to meet in a neutral place, a public garden near the church she sometimes attended. Mom looked different. Older, somehow. Like someone who had spent a year trying to make peace with herself and never quite finished. She hugged Chloe. Chloe didn't hug back. "I just want answers," Chloe said. And for once, our mother gave them. She talked. And talked. More than I'd ever heard her speak in my life. And what she said shook the foundation of everything we thought we knew. It started before Chloe and I were born. My father wasn't always the manipulator. He wasn't the first liar in the house. It was our mother. She had secrets. Affairs. One of them with a man my father worked with. A man who threatened to expose her unless she convinced my father to take a shady deal involving corporate fraud. That's when it began. The yelling. The distrust. The punishment. Not because he was just cruel, but because she had betrayed him first. They turned on each other. And when the guilt became unbearable, they turned it on us. He hit you because I broke him, she said, crying. You let him because you couldn't face what you'd done. And instead of protecting you, we both tried to control you. Because the truth was too ugly. Chloe didn't say a word. She just stood. Shaking. I didn't just survive him, she said finally. I survived you. She walked away. I stood there a moment longer. I wish you had told the truth when it mattered. Mom nodded. I couldn't. I wasn't strong like you. No, I said. You were strong. Just in the wrong direction. That night, Chloe and I sat on our couch. No music. No TV. Just silence. Not the kind that hurt. The kind that prepared you for what's next. I thought we knew everything, I said. We did, she replied. Everything that mattered. And that was true. Because whether our father had broken our mother or our mother had broken him, they had both broken us. But we had chosen something different. We chose not to lie. Not to hide. Not to pass it down. We didn't write about that final twist on the blog. Not right away. Because our story wasn't about exposing them. It was always about rescuing ourselves. But we kept the email. We never figured out who sent it. Until 3 months later. A letter came in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a short note. I'm the man your mother was with. I watched from the sidelines. I kept quiet. I know that makes me guilty, too. But I couldn't leave this world without making sure you knew. The truth doesn't always save us. But sometimes, it sets you free. A friend. Attached was a newspaper clipping. An obituary. He died 2 days after sending the email. So, in the end, it wasn't just our story. It was everyone's. Everyone who had stayed silent. Everyone who had watched. Everyone who finally spoke. And now. We live in a house filled with mirrors. Not because we love our reflections. But because now, finally, we recognize the people looking back.